Let's unpack this. Have you ever found yourself scrolling online, maybe seeing things about second passports or golden visas, and just wondering, how does that actually work?
Yeah, like who does that and why?
Exactly. It feels like this whole other world, maybe a bit exclusive, you know?
It definitely opens up a different way of thinking about borders and personal freedom, doesn't it?
Totally. And today, we're kind of pulling back the curtain on that. We're doing a deep dive, and we're using this really comprehensive FAQ guide from ALIN Global Mobility as our map, basically,
Right.
our mission. To dig into this guide and pull out the really key insights, we want to help you understand this whole area, getting second citizenships or residencies through investment, and also see how a company like ALIN operates in this space.
Okay.
So, maybe the first question, the big one. In today's world, why would someone even start thinking down this road?
That really is the fundamental question, isn't it? And the guy, well, it points to creating options and security. People are looking for better global mobility, think way more visa-free travel.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Then there's potential tax optimization, which is a big one for some. Boosting personal security, financial security, too. Getting access maybe to better education or healthcare for their kids.
Right, for the family.
And, of course, opening up new business opportunities globally. It's quite a mix of motivations.
So it's definitely more than just like a status symbol passport.
Hmm.
It connects to tangible benefits.
Absolutely. Future planning.
Now, you mentioned ALIN provided the guide.
Yeah.
There are other firms out there. What does this source say makes ALIN, well, different?
What seems to stand out in their material is this blend of services and specific expertise they talk about. They really emphasize bespoke solutions.
Meaning tailored.
Exactly. Not just a standard package. They also highlight their expertise, specifically mentioning their operations are led by a Swiss economist. That brings a sort of different analytical angle to it all.
Interesting.
And they lean on this global network of partners, legal and financial. They actually name GH Legal SRO as a key legal partner, which adds that layer of, compliance and security.
Okay.
Plus, they have this dedicated real estate arm, A-Land, which makes sense since property is such a common investment route.
So it sounds like they do more than just the immigration paperwork.
Precisely. The guide makes that quite clear. It's more holistic. They talk about helping set up companies in other countries, opening global bank accounts, offering business advice based on that economic background.
And the real estate piece, facilitating those specific investments.
Right. It's supporting a bigger picture move, not just the visa itself.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's shift gears then. Who can actually do this? What are the general requirements the guide mentions?
Well, at a base level, you absolutely need a clean criminal record. That's paramount.
No surprise there.
And you have to show proof of legitimate funds for the investment, no cutting corners on where the money came from. And then, obviously, you need to meet the investment criteria for whichever program you choose.
Are there age limits involved?
Yes. The main person applying, the principal applicant, usually needs to be over 18.
Okay.
Dependents, like kids, often have age limits too. Sometimes up to 25, maybe even 30, if they're still in full-time education and dependent. Rules for parents or grandparents can vary a lot too.
You mentioned meeting investment criteria. What kind of investments are we talking about? Is it always buying a house?
Good question. Real estate is definitely popular, but no, it's not the only way.
Oh.
You can often make a contribution, like a non-refundable donation, to a country's national development fund.
Giving back directly.
Sort of, yeah.
There.
Or buying government bonds. Some programs let you invest directly into a local business, too. It really depends on the specific country's rules.
Got it. And the guide seems to really hammer home this term due diligence. Why is that so incredibly important here?
Oh, it's fundamental.
Yeah.
Absolutely crucial for the integrity of everything. It's mandatory, and it's done by multiple parties, the government and firms like A-Land.
So like a really deep background check.
Exactly. They verify your identity, your financial history, where the funds came from, your business background. It's all about making sure only reputable people get through, protecting the programs from, well, misuse.
Right. Keeps the whole system legitimate.
Totally. It's non-negotiable. Protects everyone involved, really.
Okay, let's talk money, the investment part. What kind of minimums does the guide suggest? Where do these things typically start?
Well, it varies quite a bit, mainly between citizenship by investment, CBI, and residency by investment, RBI.
Yeah.
For CBI, especially in the Caribbean, the guide mentions minimums can actually start around, say, $100,000 to $200,000 US dollars. Often that's for the government fund contribution option. Lower than I might have guessed for citizenship. Yeah, for certain programs. Now, RBI, residency, that usually requires a higher investment. Think more like 250,000, going up to 500,000 or even more, often tied to real estate or bonds in places like Europe.
So that's the main investment. Are there lots of other costs piled on top?
Oh, absolutely. The investment is just the big ticket item.
Yeah.
You also have those due diligence fees we talked about often per person.
Right.
There are government processing fees, legal fees for the advisors like Aland and their partners, GH Legal SRO again, various administrative charges.
And if you go the property route,
Then you've got your usual real estate transaction costs, maybe stamp duties, potential property taxes down the line. It all needs to be factored in.
and can you, like, get a loan for the main investment part? Or do you need the cash up front?
Generally, no. Almost all these programs require you to have the full investment amount ready and to transfer it as part of the process. The guide is pretty clear that financing isn't usually an option.
Okay, good to know. What about the timeline? How long does this whole journey take from deciding yes to actually getting the passport or residency permit?
That's another key difference between CBI and RBI. Caribbean CBI programs. They're known for being pretty quick. The guide says typically 3 to 6 months.
Wow, that is fast for citizenship.
Relatively, yes. RBI programs usually take longer. Could be anywhere from, say, 2 months on the very fast end up to 12 months or sometimes even longer. Depends heavily on the country and how busy they are.
Can you sort of walk us through the typical steps involved? What's the process look like?
Sure. It usually starts with a consultation, right? To figure out goals,
Yeah.
eligibility. Then it's document gathering, and that can be quite a bit of paperwork.
I bet.
Then comes that crucial due diligence check. If that goes well, you make the investment. Then the formal application gets submitted to the government, they process it, and, fingers crossed, you get the approval.
Do you usually have to fly over there during the application, like for an interview or something?
It depends. Most Caribbean CBI programs. No visit required during the application. Okay. But some RBI programs, especially in Europe, maybe might require a trip. Could be for biometrics, fingerprints, photo, or possibly an interview. Varies by program.
Gotcha. Let's zoom in on CBI for a second, specifically the Caribbean ones. Which countries does the guide say Aland works with there?
The guide lists 5. Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Grenada, and Antigua and Barbuda. Those are the Caribbean CBI programs they specialize in.
And what are the main attractions of those particular options? Why choose one of them?
Well, the big draws highlighted are, first, the visa-free travel. These passports open up a lot of the world.
Major benefit.
Yeah. Then there's often a favorable tax situation. The source explicitly says no income, inheritance, or wealth tax in those places, though. You always need proper tax advice for your whole situation.
Of course.
They also mention the fast processing times, like we said, and the ability to include your family, spouse, kids, sometimes merits.
Okay. And what about your original citizenship? Do you have to give that up if you get, say, a St. Kitts passport?
That really depends on your first country's laws. Many countries now allow dual citizenship. So for a lot of people, no, they don't have to renounce their original nationality. They can hold both.
Good to know.
Yeah.
And this new citizenship, can you pass it down to your kids, grandkids?
Yes. Typically, these CBI citizenships are hereditary. They can usually be passed down to future generations, which is a significant long-term benefit for families.
All right, let's switch over to Residency by Investment, RBI. Which programs does Aland feature there, according to the guide?
They list quite a few: Panama, Greece, Latvia, Slovakia, Austria, Spain, the UAE, and Oman. A mix of locations.
We hear the term golden visa a lot. Is that just another name for RBI?
Pretty much, yeah. Golden Visa is like the popular nickname for these RBI schemes. It's where you get residency rights, often including that Schengen travel in Europe by making a qualifying investment.
Okay.
And crucially, these often offer a pathway to permanent residency or maybe even citizenship down the road if you meet other conditions.
So getting RBI doesn't automatically equal citizenship later on?
That's a really key difference, yes. RBI gives you the right to live there. Citizenship is usually a whole separate process later. It often means living there for a set number of years, maybe learning the language, integrating.
There's a potential path, not a guarantee like CBI.
Exactly. CBI is direct citizenship. RBI is residency first, potential citizenship later.
What about the benefits of those EU residency programs, like, say, Greece or Spain? What does the guide highlight?
Well, getting residency in an EU country usually means visa-free travel across the whole Schengen zone. big plus.
Definitely.
You also get access to the education and healthcare systems there, potentially high standards of living, and like we said, that option to work towards citizenship in an EU country eventually.
And for the UAE and Oman options, what makes them appealing according to the source?
For the UAE and Oman, the guide points to things like very favorable tax laws, often zero income tax.
Wow.
Plus, high levels of safety, very business-friendly environments, and great global connections. They're major hubs.
You mentioned needing to live there for citizenship with RBI. How much time are we talking? Do you have to physically be there a lot?
That varies hugely between programs. The guide uses Greece as an example, where you might only need to visit very briefly, maybe once every few years, just to keep the residency active.
Okay, minimal.
But if you want to eventually naturalize and become a citizen in other countries, yes, you often need to spend significant time there, sometimes 183 days a year or more for several years. Big difference.
Right. Switching back to family for a moment, can you usually include your spouse and kids in these applications, both CBI and RBI?
Yes, absolutely. That's a core feature. Spouse-independent children are almost always includable.
We mentioned age limits for kids.
Right. Often up to 25 or 30 if they're still dependent in school. Some programs even let you include dependent parents or grandparents.
Does adding family members cost extra?
Oh, yes. Including dependents will definitely increase the government fees and the due diligence costs. It's usually priced per person added.
And do they all have to apply together at the start? Or can a child maybe join later?
Depends on the specific program. Some are flexible, allow you to add dependents later. Others require everyone applying under that investment to do it all at once, right from the beginning. Need to check the rules for each one.
Let's tackle taxes. This sounds potentially complicated. How does getting a second citizenship or residency actually affect your tax situation?
It is complicated and super important. Getting a new passport or residency permit doesn't automatically change your tax obligations overnight.
Okay.
It really depends on the tax laws of your current country, your new country, and where you actually live and have economic ties. Some CBI countries, like the Caribbean ones mentioned, have very simple, attractive tax systems.
Right, no income tax, etc.
But for RBI, becoming a tax resident usually depends on physical presence. That classic 183-day rule often comes into play, and where your center of economic life is. It can definitely shift your tax liabilities.
So does AILAND give you specific tax advice on this?
What the guide says is that AILAND provides general insights on the tax implications of different programs. But because it's so personal and complex, they connect clients with licensed, independent tax experts in each specific country.
Ah, okay. So you get specialized advice.
Exactly. Ensures it's tailored and compliant for your situation. You really need that expert guidance.
Makes sense. Beyond just getting the status, how does AILAND help people with the business side of things if they move or invest abroad?
The guide emphasizes they support that too. They help with setting up companies, choosing the right jurisdiction, the legal structure like an LLC or an IBC, handling the paperwork, compliance.
What are the upsides of forming a company in some of these places?
Well, the guide lists things like potentially very low or even zero corporate taxes, enhanced privacy, maybe asset protection depending on the structure, often easier regulations, simpler business setup, and better access to global markets or banking.
And bank accounts.
Yeah.
Setting up international accounts can be tricky. Do they help with that?
Yes, they coordinate that. The source says they help clients open secure, multi-currency accounts with reputable international banks. That's pretty key for managing finances globally.
Do they offer any ongoing business advice?
Yes, the guide mentions strategic business advisory services, using their team's expertise, remember, the Swiss economist, and their network of regional partners.
You mentioned their specialized real estate arm, AILAND, earlier.
Yeah.
How does that part work specifically for these investment programs?
Right. So AILAND is focused just on the property aspect of CBI and RBI. They find properties that actually qualify under the program rules. Sometimes they have to be government-approved projects.
Right.
They do due diligence on the properties themselves, provide valuations, and then manage the whole buying process for the client, start to finish.
What kind of properties are we talking about? Is it always fancy villas?
Not necessarily. It depends on the program, but options mentioned include shares in hotels or resorts, apartments, sometimes even commercial spaces, as long as it meets the minimum investment and the program rules.
Can you actually earn money from these properties, like rent them out?
Yes. The guide says many options, especially hotel shares or apartments in tourist areas, are set up to generate rental income. So it can be both a qualifying investment and potentially provide a return.
Does ALAN manage the rentals afterwards?
They facilitate the purchase. The guide notes that for ongoing management, finding tenants, maintenance, they connect clients with trusted local property management companies. And it's worth adding, the guide also talks about support after you get approved.
Oh, yeah. What kind of things?
Ongoing help. Like, if you set up a company, they help with annual renewals, compliance, assistance with tax filing in the new country, even things like family office support or estate planning. It's about long-term integration.
And just settling in, if you actually plan to move there.
Yeah, they mention offering practical integration support, guidance on lifestyle, finding local services, just generally navigating the new place.
That sounds helpful. Now, a big concern for anyone doing this must be privacy. Personal data, financial info. How does ALAN address security and confidentiality?
They emphasize this strongly in the guide. They state they follow strict data privacy rules and have robust confidentiality protocols in place to protect all that sensitive client information.
And ensuring the programs themselves are legitimate, not scams.
Right, that comes back to due diligence and partnerships. They state they only work with official, government-approved CBI and RBI programs. And they rely on their vetted legal partners, like GH Legal SRO, to ensure everything is done by the book, legally compliant in each country.
What are the biggest risks someone should be aware of if they pursue this path?
The main risks the guide highlights are basically fraud dealing with dodgy operators or just messing up the application, failing on compliance. And it explains how ALAN tries to minimize these risks through their own thorough checks on clients and programs, only using those verified government-approved options and having that legal oversight from partners like GH Legal. It really underlines why using a reputable advisor is so important.
Definitely. Okay, this has been incredibly detailed. Drawing from that ALAN guide, if someone listening is thinking, okay, I'm curious, maybe this is for me, what are the next steps the source suggests for connecting with ALAN?
Well, the guide suggests the easiest way to start is just to reach out for an initial chat. You can call them, the number listed is +41 79 279 7979,
Okay.
or visit their website, which is https://immigration.a.land. There's also an email protected.
And is there an offer mentioned for that first contact?
Yes, they offer a free personalized consultation. It's a chance to talk about your own situation, your goals, and get a preliminary idea of what options might fit.
And just to circle back on reliability, reaching out means engaging with that secure framework they described.
Exactly. The guide positions it that way. Connecting with them means working through that structure involving GH Legal SRO for legal compliance, using only government-approved programs, and handling funds through reputable banks. It's all about that secure, compliant process.
You know, going through all this, it really makes you think about the bigger picture. The guide uses phrases like global ascendancy and building a borderless future built on opportunity. When you consider these investment pathways to citizenship or residency, what does that vision of a borderless future actually mean in practice? What are the implications for how we view nationality?
That's a fascinating question. It sort of challenges that traditional idea that you belong only to the place you were born, doesn't it? This idea of a future built on opportunity, facilitated by investment migration, suggests people can strategically choose where they align their lives, their finances, based on where offers the best fit for their goals. It kind of reframes mobility itself as a form of capital, and it definitely raises questions about whether citizenship might evolve, becoming less tied purely to birthplace or heritage, and maybe more linked to contribution or investment in a country's future. It's a potential shift.
Right. Definitely food for thought. It leaves you wondering about that evolving landscape of belonging. For you listening, what was the one thing from this deep dive that really stood out or made you think,